Wait a minute. Are these celebrities lying to us?
Brian, I'm excited about this show because we sort of love celebrities, right? We get to know their characters, we get to follow their lives, we get to see all these things. And so when they start giving us advice, we think, oh, maybe I should listen to this person. Maybe I should dial in to what they have to say. But today we're going to talk about how potentially they might not have your best interests at heart.
Yeah, I would let your spidey senses kind of peak instead of getting excited when celebrities give advice.
But before we do that, before we jump in, we do have an exciting thing to share with you today. I'm going to throw it over to producer Reby to tell you all about it.
You asked for it, so we are playing Money Guy Bingo today. If you haven't had a chance to screenshot or save this Money Guy Bingo board, you can grab it in the link in the description of this video. So all you have to do is watch and play along. If Brian or Bo or myself or Daniel in the chat say any of the things that are on these spaces on the bingo board, mark it off. And if you get 5 in a row, that means that you are a bingo winner, and the first 5 of you to comment bingo in the comments of this video will have a chance to get a tumbler. So if you comment bingo, I know, right? We're just giving away the tumblers today. Right. So if you do get bingo, try to be the first one to comment, and then we will comment back to you to tell you if you've won, and you can email Katie, Katie, @moneyguy.com to verify that and redeem your tumbler. So we good to go?
Good.
Get out those boards and let's talk about these celebrities that are lying to you.
One quick sidebar. I can't help myself, but I know in the comments section, so many were dropping such awesome dimes of other things we say that I think I see more game boards coming into play. So,
all right.
Yeah,
Katie,
I mean,
your job's going to get harder on being the referee on this once we have 2 or 3 of these boards.
This is a little bit of a trial balloon. Like, if we all like it, maybe we'll play some more.
All right, Brian, so let's talk a little bit about celebrities. They're good at a lot of things. You know, it's not uncommon to see a celebrity who can not only act, they can sing, and then you find out that they're a scratch golfer, or they can dunk a basketball, and you're thinking, man, is there anything that these celebrities can't do? Are there any skills that they don't have, and are they good at everything they talk about?
Well, I mean, I got to tell you, Crypto did dig deep on this, because not only did they grab the janitor for MIT who becomes a genius, to the Jason Bourne who, you know, solving all world things that are going on and saving us all, to the point that the Martian, where he can get stuck in space and all by himself salvage himself and rescue. But of course, you should take advice from these people, right?
And let's see what some of the financial advice Mr. Matt Damon has to offer us. Check this out.
History is filled with almost.
The holodeck.
With those who almost adventured, who almost achieved, but ultimately, for them it proved to be too much.
Didn't make
Then there are others. The ones who embrace the moment.
I've seen Instagram. That's not the way they're
commit.
climbing that mountain anymore.
And in these moments of truth, these men and women,
All right, solid.
these mere mortals,
Wait a minute.
just like you and me,
scene.
as they peer over
How does
the
that
edge,
finish? Wait a minute.
How's it
Space
happen?
travel.
they calm their minds and steel
Clubbing,
their
space
nerves
travel? Yeah, it's connected.
with 4 simple words that have been whispered by the intrepid since the time of the
Here
Romans.
it comes.
Fortune favors the brave.
Yes. Okay.
And there it is, crypto.com.
Fortune favors the brave. When I first saw this, I didn't know if this was a Martian reference or if this was a wink and a nod that, hey, you know who owns Mars? Elon. And you know, and Elon got distracted by this whole crypto thing. You should too.
If you're a fact checker out there, I don't actually think Elon owns Mars. I want to be very clear about that. I don't think
come
it's his
on.
just
Well,
yet.
at this point, I mean, who's trying to get to Mars? I mean, it's kind of, you know, it's at least in the thesaurus is that way.
So Matt Damon is drawing all these comparisons to all these world changers like Elon. You know, he mentions the Everest climbers and the Wright brothers and all this stuff. It says
and dating in the club
and meeting people in the club. And he says, you know what? You potentially should get into crypto. You should get into cryptocurrency because that is the bold, brave new world that will likely be your key to financial success.
By the way, I want to know, Crypto.com, how profitable is this stuff? Because they also named the Staples Center in LA.
For the
They,
Lakers.
if you follow Formula One, they're like at every corner of the races these days. And then, of course, this whole Matt Damon, highly produced video. This was not something that you and I put together and then slapped up out there for everybody to see. I mean, this is very well produced. If only, let's see how this worked out for everybody.
So if you look at the price of Bitcoin, starting back in 2020 all the way till the present, this commercial actually came out around October, November-ish time frame of 2021. The price of Bitcoin specifically, that cryptocurrency, has fallen by 61% since Matt Damon partnered with Crypto.com. And I think that's a really interesting thing to know. This is no surprise to us now. We know how this game works. Matt Damon probably cares a lot more about the paychecks that he's getting from Crypto.com than he does about whether or not that's what you ought to be doing with your hard-earned dollars.
Now, look, before we go too hard, because I feel like we're already jeopardizing us being invited to hang out with Matt and his spouse and then Ben and J-Lo, you know, so we probably need to make sure everybody knows this is not just a Matt Damon issue.
right.
There's other celebrities out there issuing financial advice. Let's do a deep dive on that.
Yeah, there are some really hard hitters that have waded
I
into
see what
these
you did there.
waters.
Look at you.
Look at this tweet from Mike Tyson. He says, "Much love to everyone that participated in the first NFT drop. Bigger and badder drops to come. Hashtag baddest NFTs on the planet."
By the way, August 26, 2021, when Mike posted that, bigger and badder drops to come. I guess we should, that word batter is doing a lot of work there. We should have probably defined what type of batter drop he was referring to, because you just said it. I mean, 95%. And by the way, this is an NFT that featured the famous him gnawing on Evander
biting off his
Holyfield's
ear.
And it also has him kissing some of his pigeons. I mean, it's just, you can't make this stuff up. It's just weird.
So potentially, had you decided to jump on this bigger and badder wagon, it might not have worked out as well for you. But maybe you're thinking, okay, I'm not so into the Matt Damon thing, and Mike Tyson, maybe he's a little bit aggressive for me. I want to like partner and take advice from someone a lot sweeter, someone who's a lot more down to earth, someone who I can relate to that makes me feel super comfortable. And so we thought, okay, maybe America's sweetheart, Reese Witherspoon. She said in this tweet in December of 2021, "Crypto is here to stay. I'm committed to supporting creators who have pioneered the NFT space and encouraging more women to be part of the conversation," which I think is great, talking about women in finance and how we kind of continue those conversations. But it's interesting that the NFT space is the one that she kind of like stuck her flag in.
Yeah, I mean, you can see. I mean, these things are writing themselves, and the fact that since Reese kind of drew attention to this, the NFT she specifically mentioned is down 75%.
Yep.
So this all leads itself to say, what are we doing here? I mean, these people, yes, they communicate well. They can stir emotion within us, but is this who we should be taking our financial advice from? And I got to tell you, the answer is no.
Nope.
Because I think the common denominator with all three of these examples is that they had huge conflicts of interest. They were basically paid to promote and get you stirred up and get you excited. They were not paid to ensure that you actually are making good financial decisions with them influencing you.
And perhaps it wasn't malicious motives. Perhaps it's not because they were trying to deceive. But at the end of the day, they're just not experts. Mike Tyson is really good at something, and that's something he was one of the best on the planet on. Giving financial advice might not have been his area of expertise. Same thing with Matt Damon, same thing with Reese Witherspoon. So when it comes to who you take advice from and who you let into your head, you kind of have to have your guards up.
Well, I like decision matrices, things that you can use as resources to figure out how in the world should I approach some of these type of decisions. And always, whenever you have conflicts of interest, you kind of need to do a little bit deeper dive to understand, hey, what could also be influencing this decision? And look, this was, you even picked on me in the content. You're like, this is a little bit of a stretch, but I really do think at a minimum, go to moneyguy.com/resources. We have 8 questions to ask financial advisors. I know none of these people are financial advisors, but if you put it through the decision matrix of these questions, I think that the average person would be able to watch this and be like, yeah, this probably is not good, information I'm receiving. This might emotionally stir me and get me excited, but it's not going to be good for me in the long term.
And while not all of these questions will apply, even if you're watching a celebrity who's endorsing a product, you can ask the question, hey, tell me about this person's qualifications and experience. Why are they the ones that should be wading into this? How does this person get compensated for the advice that they're giving me? If I act on this, what does it mean for them? And you can kind of walk through these questions. Again, they're not all going to apply, but it at least allow you to do some investigation before you decide to take someone's advice on how you should use your dollars.
Yeah, and that leads to kind of, I think, an overreaching umbrella that you could have to also protect you. A backstop is the working with us. Now, a lot of people will be like, wait a minute, you guys have conflicts of interest too. I'm like, of course, anybody in personal finance has a conflict of interest. The difference is what we talk about as the abundance cycle, Bo, is that Bo gives away tons of free information. We even give you all these free resources that we just shared with the thought, yes, we have a conflict of interest, but at least it's aligned with you in the fact that once you reach success, you have to at least have the success. So we give you all this free information to energize you, to accelerate that process. So at least you can kind of understand what our thoughts on what our worldview towards personal finance is, and you can become the best version of yourself.
And look, we love being able to load you up with financial advice. We just told you sort of our ulterior motive is the abundance cycle, but it's okay. We are patient. We love you being able to tune in, learn the concepts that we're sharing, and apply them to your financial lives. If all you ever do are those first 2 steps and we're able to add value, then we consider that a job well done. So we love putting together content like this. We love coming up with ideas that we can talk to you about, but we also really love getting to answer your questions. One of the reasons we even do these live streams is so that you can tell us the things that you are curious about. So right now, if you have a question, we have the team out in the wings collecting them. Make sure you get them in the chat, and producer Reby is going to load us up.
Let's do it. Lots of fun conversation happening in the chat, including James H. He asks, if our contributions equal 25%, but do not max out our 401ks, can we jump to hyperaccumulation if our 401k plans do not offer good options? What do you think?
Great question.
This is a great question.
We've gotten this. What I love about when we did the Financial Order of Operations course, which is the deep dive for anybody looking to accelerate the journey and go to learn.moneyguy.com, is we came out with the original version, but then we started getting questions clarifying things like this, as well as like, how do I do my house down payment? There was a whole slew of questions that came in that really made us realize, hey, we need to go even deeper than what we thought was a really good course. And this came out in version 2.0 that we actually addressed this. And here's our thoughts. Yes. I mean, because I can still remember not only from questions from people who had bought the course, but Bo, you and I actually gave a speech, a presentation at an engineers conference. And I still remember one of the engineers raised her hand and she goes, look, it seems a little tone deaf that I'm going to be saving all this money and then I'm not even going to get to the point that I'm saving for my kids' education. Isn't this off? And I was like, no. Here's what you need to understand. And James said it right. Once you reach 25% of your gross income, you have, in our eyes, maxed out your retirement as what you need to be doing so you can feel kind of released to start thinking about the 3-bucket strategy, which is step 7, and then moving to step 8, which is then saving for the kids' college. All of that is interconnected because there are people who make less than $100,000 that will not, even though they are hyper accumulators and saving 25% and investing that money, that will not hit the $20,500. So the plan needs to address that. And that's why we've written that into it. So, James, that is a great question. And yes, you can move forward to hyperaccumulation.
Yeah, I think the way that you go about determining, does this make sense for me, is you have to begin with the end in mind. Remember, the financial order of operations are supposed to put guardrails in place that allow you to use your money to do the things that you ultimately want to do. Well, as you get into step 6 and 7, you have to begin answering questions like, okay, when do I want to retire? When am I going to exit the workforce? Well, if I'm going to be someone who retires early, perhaps I do need to start building up that third bucket in lieu of building up the 401k that perhaps I can't access until 59 and a half. So use the financial order of operations to kind of let you continue on the journey. But as you begin to know what the finish line looks like, as you begin to see the horizon coming closer and closer, you do have to figure out, okay, what is the specific plan for me that makes the most sense, that allows me to do the things that I want to do, the way that I want to do them, when I want to do them. And that's a great time that a lot of people begin answering that question by reaching out and thinking about taking the relationship to the next level, because it is, you only get, most of us, one shot at retirement. So before you actually take that chance, before you actually go ahead and say, all right, I'm done, my army of dollar bills is big enough to provide for me for the rest of my life, you want to make sure that you've measured 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times before you cut those strings so that you can make sure you're doing it as good as possible. And one of those things might be, all right, stop funding the 401k as aggressively so I can start building up the after-tax account.
That's great. And by the way, I threw out a link to, or a reference to learn.moneyguy.com. But also, look, if you just want to know what the 9 steps of the financial order of operations are, go to moneyguy.com/resources, and you can download the free deliverable as well.
Love it.
Awesome. We got another question from Connor. He says, I'm 25 years old with a 320K income and 100K net worth. He grew up working class. So his question is, how do I overcome the guilt of success and the fear of losing everything? Is it time for a financial advisor? How should he be thinking about this?
So I want to make sure I got those numbers right. He's 25 years old. He has a $320,000 income, and he has a $100,000 net
Yes,
worth.
honestly, it sounds like you're killing it.
Dude, that is a financial mutant through and through. And so the question that Connor has, I want to make sure I have this, is like he's feeling some guilt around being successful and like achieving that so early in life.
And then that fear that like it could all go away. Like what if something happens and he loses everything, or his financial situation isn't good anymore? Yeah, like, so how does he think through like that psychological piece of success and wealth building?
I think a lot of financially successful people really struggle with this, Brian. We always talk about it because you see this a ton with entrepreneurs, even entrepreneurs that have started businesses that are doing really well. There's always this fear that tomorrow this is going to go away. What if tomorrow my customers stop showing up? What if tomorrow my clients go away? And I don't know that that's a horribly bad thing to have, because that fear can kind of keep you motivated. But if we're really going to get down to it, at the very base level, none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. None of us know what tomorrow is going to be, what's going to happen with our financial situation tomorrow, what's going to happen with our job tomorrow, what's going to happen with our health tomorrow. So all we can do is, in this moment, do the best that we can to plan for what we hope tomorrow is going to look like. So I would argue, if you're 25 years old and you're making $320,000 a year, what I love hearing is that you're not saying, oh man, I'm going to be loaded, I'm going to have plenty of money, I am going to be set. You have a healthy fear, and I would encourage you, focus on, while that income is so strong, save, so that you can build up a solid financial foundation, so that maybe if in your 30s or your 40s you're not at that same income level, your future self will thank your current self for exercising the discipline required to build wealth by deferring your gratification into the future and capitalizing on a savings rate with a really healthy income. We see this all the time, Brian, with athletes who don't recognize that. I know you said you've had like personal experience with that in the past.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to be very purposeful in your actions, and that's what as I was seeing these, I think they're interconnected, and I'll get all philosophical. I'm the older one here. Got more life events that have happened, so it gives me a little depth that I love to kind of share some things. And one of the things I always think about, and maybe it's because I'm a big fan, you see the Apple iPod over my shoulder. It's even got the magazine where Steve Jobs was announcing that iPod. And I always think about what else would Steve Jobs have done if he was here? Because he just because he was such a even move outside of Apple and you could think of Pixar, and then I bring that internal, and I know my grandfather passed away on my dad's side when he was 50, and then my father passed away at 55. And I'm like, man, no day is promised to me. And I've actually used that. Now, a lot of people would say, YOLO, you need to go out there and enjoy life. But I actually feel much more purposeful with every day, since it's not promised. I better get busy from a legacy standpoint, from a productivity standpoint, of just feeling like I'm part of something bigger and better, and I'm making the world a better place. So that's why I think these two things are interconnected. First of all, guilt. If you have guilt, there's ways to, just like we talk about the abundance cycle, we talk about being very purposeful. There's nothing wrong with you saving and building and investing that money and building wealth. But you also need to be thinking about, am I doing things in a very good way? Meaning, I'm generous with my time if I don't have money. If I do have money and you have resources, am I being generous with my resources also? Because I do think there is an element of, hey, if you're blessed with the ability and talents that you can generate a lot of money, go out there and be fruitful with it. Actually let that be something that you can pay it forward. It doesn't mean you have to give away everything, but I do think you can, put some purpose to it so that you have some fulfillment that's tied to this talent that you have that's actually obviously bearing a really strong income. As for the going away, I actually think this is one of those desired difficulties that I see entrepreneurs and other high producers have. I've experienced this my whole life. As I started making good money, I was like, man, it is going away. But I think that is also, that fear is what hopefully keeps you always trying to be better and do things better and not take it for granted, so that you're purposeful and actually save, build, have something to show for all this that you've created. That's how I handle this. And that's why that's part of the engine for the financial order of operations, is that I want you to have that good balance of being very purposeful for building wealth, but also knowing that life is not promised in a way so that you are building those memories, but also you're doing something that will have some type of legacy. Look, 2 generations from now, nobody will even probably really remember much about Steve Jobs, but I still think that you can be purposeful about what does this say about you and how you can make this a legacy, fulfilled, and also feel like you're part of something bigger than you.
Love it. Connor, great question. It sounds like you are truly a financial mutant and you are in the right place. You are part of the Money Guy family. Now, the nice thing about, something I love about our show is that you don't have to be where Connor is yet in order to be that financial mutant and have that mindset that's going to give you success, right? And I love this question from Creative Mechanic to kind of follow up on this. What does the FOO, financial order of operations, look like for those of us with a combined income of less than $50K a year right now? So more at the beginning of the journey. Are there any tips to maximize savings or to do the FOO in the best way with a lower income?
Bo, I find that this is what's so cool about wealth. Is that it's on a scale that really is so personalized to everybody in their journey. Because look, we have educators that are clients of our firm that never made a great,
never had huge incomes.
Never had huge incomes, but either had pensions or they just were very diligent with their savings. And that's why we even, we had an earlier question saying, hey, can I move on from 6 maxing out retirement? Once I hit 25%, even if I'm not maxing out my 401k, of course you can, because we want you to get to that step 7, which is hyperaccumulation, the 3 buckets, as well as get to step 8, which lets you start funding the kids' college and so forth. We have designed this so that it does work no matter where you are. And here's what I would tell Creative Mechanic, by the way, is that, look, we have seen people, what's your number, and knowing your number is so very important, because it's going to be different for every person. And we've done content, we've got some things, exciting things coming up that will answer Creative Mechanic's question specifically, because it does remind me of that commercial of the past where you see people who have, one person might have 900,000 as their just number over their head, floating above their head. Another person might have $4.3 million, because think about it, somebody who has $800,000 or $1 million, let's just take million because it's easy for public math purposes, and you can get a 5% withdrawal rate. I mean, that's $50,000 a year. Creative Mechanic just said that's what his household needs. And then you even put, because anybody who is making that level of income, the societal safety net of Social Security is going to provide a large portion of that. It works. Now, so that's what I tell, do well with what you are blessed with and save it in a way that 15, 20, 25% that we 25% that we aspirationally always talk about will do the rest of the work for you. Now, if you're a person, I want to flip the script upside down, is that if you're somebody who makes $200,000 a year, because we had a question from a young person, and you're not saving the money, shame that you're not turning the blessing of that good income into actual resources that will provide for the future, provide for you to be generous. That's where I think I love the people like Creative Mechanic who don't make a ton of money, but are very purposeful with every dollar in their army of dollars.
I think what's really great about wealth is there's really 3 ingredients that it takes to build wealth. It takes discipline, it takes money, and it takes time. And those are sort of agnostic to where your income is. It doesn't matter if you have a high income. If you can be disciplined and you can save for the future and you give it enough time to grow, that little bit of money can turn into a lot of money. I'd encourage you, Creative, if you want to go to our website, go to moneyguide.com/resources and go look at our wealth multiplier. And what you can see is that even at an income of $50,000 for a household, if you can save 15, 20, 25% of that at today's age, go see what every one of those dollars can turn into by the time that you get to 65, and let that be motivation. We have a number of clients, just like Brian said, who have a couple $100,000 portfolio that they've built up over a career, and they're completely financially independent. They're able to do what they want, when they want, the way that they want. Then we have other folks who have millions of dollars saved up, and they're able to do that. Wealth is very much relative for your goals and your circumstances. So I think if you can follow the FOO and put it into practice right now today, you'll be amazed at how powerful it can be over the long term as you get your army of dollar bills working for you.
Yeah, I mean, I stand by the fact anyone can be wealthy.
Yep.
It's just a matter of, do you want to allocate a portion of today for that great, big, beautiful tomorrow? Make it happen.
Yeah. Great question, Creative Mechanic. Hopefully that motivates everyone watching right now that, yeah, like Brian said, it just takes a little bit today to get you to where you want to be. All right, Derek Z has a question. He asks, I don't have access to an HSA through work. So what should I look for when opening one, and where? Are there some companies better than others? Are there things that I should consider? Obviously, HSAs are part of what you suggest in the financial order of operations. So what do you guys think?
We love HSAs when they're available. The first thing that we have to kind of level set in order to be able to contribute to a health savings account, you have to make sure that you are currently covered under a high deductible health plan. Not all health insurances will make you eligible to contribute to an HSA. It's only if you're in a high deductible plan. Well, if you work for an employer that has, I'm just going to use 2 options for simplicity, and one of them is like this highly subsidized Cadillac amazing insurance, but it's not high deductible. And then you have this high deductible plan, but it's not like the cost savings isn't justified. Don't assume that you should automatically go for the one that makes you HSA eligible, because it's not always the best case. We see a lot of employers where they subsidize really, really great plans for their employees, and you have to take that into consideration. But if you are someone and you are in a high deductible plan, and that does make you eligible to contribute to a health savings account, what you do, how you do it, and who you use as a provider can make a huge difference.
Yeah, and first of all, if your employer does offer it, there are some added benefits in the fact not only with the high deductible, but if they offer the HSA directly through like your cafeteria plan, you're probably saving payroll taxes too,
sure.
which is an added benefit. But for somebody like Derek, where maybe they have a high deductible plan, but they don't actually offer the HSA account, the custodian who's going to hold your money, then you have a few more things you got to figure out. First of all, are you somebody who's going to use this as a clearing account, meaning you put the money in, you take the tax deduction, but then you pull it right back out for the reimbursement of all your medical expenses? That's the way 96% of people use health savings accounts. So that's the first thing to cover. Now, if you're one of those financial mutants who has built up enough in your HSA that you can cover some of the basics, like your deductible of what, of anything that might happen in the coming year. And you actually want to be part of the 4% that's going to invest that money. Now you've got a bigger decision grid that you have to figure out. And here's what I would do, Derek, is I would go figure out, okay, if I am going to be a financial mutant who wants to invest a portion of my HSA, okay, we've got to figure out what are the annual costs to even have this as an option to do the investing, because a lot of providers, they will offer it, but there is a cost to do the investing side. What are the investment options? I mean, is this going to be low-cost index type funds, or is it going to be some obscure investment company that's going to charge me with high-cost funds or some crazy trading fees? I mean, I like it when they do offer the Vanguards or the Fidelities and all those type of low-cost index funds, because that stuff is going to be important to keep your costs down. And I'll tell you, a few years ago, this was the Wild Wild West, meaning that you had to go work with some obscure HSA custodians that would maybe have a Vanguard, a few funds in there that do. But I got to tell you, the world has changed. And this is what I love about innovation. This is what I love about the world with these providers trying to encapsulate and get more market share. Big players like Fidelity have gotten into the health savings account space.
Yep.
And I got to tell you that I think that changed this landscape a lot. That's not an endorsement of Fidelity, but I will tell you, because I haven't seen if Vanguard offers HSAs. I don't know if Charles Schwab, but I know Fidelity, because we had so many people bring it to our attention, that you can go directly put your stuff with Fidelity as a custodian, and they have access to all their low-cost index funds.
Now, one thing you want to make sure of, though, right? So if you do have access to HSA plan, and say you have an employer that puts money in the plan for you, they make a $1,000 contribution or do some sort of employer contribution, sometimes they will make you captive to a provider. So even though you could go open an HSA at Fidelity, if you were to do that, you perhaps might miss out on free employer money. And we'd rather have free money at a bad provider than not free money at a really great provider. So make sure you consider that and you understand how your specific plan operates before you decide to go away from the employer-provided option.
Great answer. Thanks for your question, Derek. The Straw Knight has a question. He says, I've managed my portfolio for 30 years, and now that I'm 5 years from retirement, should I consider using a financial advisor? What do you guys think?
But I love, you kind of talk about 3 times people ought to consider. And this one Straw Knight's question sounds a lot like one of those 3. Sure. Do you mind going over those 3?
Yeah, so we think when it comes time to hire a financial advisor, there's usually 3 inflection points that you hit. Either 1, the size of your portfolio, the size of your dollars, the size of your decisions has gotten so big you recognize there could be huge repercussions. Early on in your working career, if you make a financial boo-boo and it's a boo-boo on $1,000, it might not change your life. Later on, if you make a boo-boo on $1 million, that could be substantial. That could change things. The second thing is, as we age and as our financial circumstances change, they tend to get more complicated. Back in the day, maybe you could do your tax return in an hour on April 14th. And now all of a sudden you see your tax return, you don't understand half the stuff that's on it. It doesn't make any sense to you. And now your compensation is different and your benefits are different. Now you got to go get estate documents and your financial circumstance just gets complicated, and you want to make sure you understand what all those things are and you have all of your I's dotted and your T's crossed. That's sort of the second inflection point. And then the third inflection point, I think this is one that happens to all of us as well. We just get busy with social commitments and family commitments and work commitments and all these other things pulling on us. It's not incredibly difficult for our financial matters to fall on the back burner. And you begin recognizing, man, that thing that I was going to do last week turned into I didn't do it last month or last quarter or last year. Holy cow, I haven't done that very important financial thing that I need to do. So if you find yourself in one of those 3 positions, or maybe you're in a combination of those, that's a really solid indicator that perhaps you're at the stage where it makes sense to take the relationship to the next level.
Well, I think like Straw Knight said, he's 5 years from landing the airplane into retirement, and that's the point where you probably do need to start stress testing to make sure the retirement that you're anticipating will be that good.
Yep.
You know, even with systematic risk of returns of where we are in the market cycle, nothing that is going to blind you and derail your long-term financial success. It's also one of those things where I think, and this is different, if you're looking for just asset allocation help, there's a gazillion people that do that, but you will get to a point where you need a real financial planner, because retirement actually gets somewhat complex.
Absolutely.
But even beyond just the stress testing of giving you a probability of how good your success is, you're going to find out that, hey, in retirement, maybe you want to turn some of those tax deferred dollars, the employer money and so forth, into Roth dollars. So you got to do a Roth conversion strategy. That's going to have tax ramifications. Yep. And then that's even going to have an impact on Social Security. That's going to have an impact on Medicare premiums. All this stuff is floating around out there. It goes way beyond, you know, just, hey, can somebody give me an asset allocation? Because even the asset allocation might need to be tax allocated, meaning that different accounts hold different type of assets. So you're the most efficient version of yourself in retirement. That stuff is the part that I always say heavy lifting does start really happening in retirement, because then it also leans into the estate planning. And there's just a lot of stuff that I think, you're probably straw night. If you're 5 years from retirement and you've been saving and investing for 30 years, I got to believe you're probably at that critical mass point that there's enough resources there that let's make sure you have a co-pilot, that CFO that kind of works with you as the CEO of your personal financial life, to maximize and protect you from the blind spots that you just don't even are aware of yet.
Brian, you have this great line about, you know, when someone's approaching retirement, they get to do it once. Yeah. But when you hire a financial advisor, you're actually getting something more than that. You're actually hiring someone who's maybe done hundreds of retirements, maybe helped tons of people work through that. So very often it can be really good money spent to make sure you're gathering someone else's expertise who's helped people in a very similar situation to you cross over that threshold. Now, obviously, we think if you're going to hire a financial advisor, you should reach out to us at aboundwealth.com, because we have the absolute best financial planning team in the entire world. However, if you're out there and you're just thinking, I want to go vet this on my own, I want to go find someone on my own, we have a tool you can use. Go to moneyguy.com/resources and download our questions you can ask a financial advisor. No matter who you sit down with, whether there's someone in your hometown or someone that you know or a referral from a friend, ask them these questions. They ought to be able to very clearly explain to you their answers for each one to help you make sure you're hiring someone who's going to help you navigate this very important transition that you're about to walk through in the next 5 years.
Great question. Matthew has another question. He says, you always talk about knowing your financial number, but how do you plan for future expenses in retirement prior to having kids, and largely with an unknown future in regards to expenses?
Man, I love this question. So I want to make sure that I'm going to make sure I'm understanding what he asked correctly. Did you understand? He was saying, hey, how do I know what I'm going to spend in retirement when I'm in the early part of my career, before kids and before all like the messiness of what we call the messy middle life stuff? Is that the question that Matthew's asking?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Cool.
Well, I see what you did there, Bo. And I was thinking it too, is that this is the part, and look, we get picked on for this, is that, and it's not, it's just we're trying to say, make sure you do your homework, because we've done several FIRE videos. And look, we support financial independence. It's we even support retiring early. We've helped a number of people work through that. The thing that we always tell people is just be careful when you're making decisions that will be so long. Because retirement used to be 30 years. But now people are making decisions where they have retirements that are 40 and 50 and beyond. I mean, some of these projections on where medical science is and how long we'll live, this stuff is going to put us in a stratosphere that we have never seen before. And I worry about people, especially if you're pre-kids or you're right in the beginning of kids, is you don't know what life has in store for you. I mean, because, I just took my daughter to college yesterday.
Oh boy, here it comes.
No, I'm not going to cry. I'm going to try not to cry. But it was definitely a big life event. And that's a celebration point. But sure. I could also share that, my youngest child is special needs. She's probably going to need somebody to take care of her for the rest of her life. So I have to not just have one retirement. I have to have two retirement accounts, because I have to plan for me and my wife, but I also have to plan for my youngest child. If I had visions of retiring at 45, when, that it would have been blown up by having this child. And there's a lot of famous fire people that, retired because they had built up $3 million and retired in their, late 30s, early 40s. And then they found out, but we didn't know how much daycare was going to cost. We didn't know how much college was going to cost, and all these things that come out of nowhere. That's why there is a benefit to kind of, I always say the 50 plus retirements, because at 50 plus, there are a lot of life things that have settled in the fact that, and I'm getting close to that. It's like I know I'm not having any more kids, so I know what that is. Even with the special needs child, I know what that obligation is going to be. I also know I'm living in the house. I don't need to keep swimming upstream. I could afford a bigger house, but I'm not. I'm happy. I know what contentment is. There's a maturity that comes with somebody as you get close to 50 that you kind of know where you want to end up. And I think that there's a lot of value in that stuff. So I worry about, and look, I was one of those people. If you asked the 20-something version of myself, I would have said, I am out of here at 50 years old. Sure. And then here I am getting close to the 50 mark.
You're like, I'm not going anywhere yet,
I'm
right?
not going. I love what I do for a living, because I think I was looking at my job as work back in my 20s, and it was a goal I was saving, I was funding. Now I've realized I am part of a purpose, and I will have the financial independence. That's already been obtained, but the retire early, that doesn't have as much value as it once did. So I think you have to kind of give yourself enough time to reach the inflection point that you kind of know who you are completely and what brings you happiness, what brings you fulfillment. I want you to save in your 20s and 30s, though, so you have that option, though, because there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I want to be out of the workforce at 45 years of age, because having abundance and the ability to retire at 45 doesn't mean you actually have to walk through that threshold. And maybe you use that threshold to go work in something else or do something else, because everybody I know in the fire movement who actually does it, they don't actually retire. They just start creating content on being a fire movement, which is, if you think about it, is another job.
I have just two thoughts that hit me. When someone comes to us and they're thinking about retiring, we really ask them, hey, okay, what do you think you're going to spend? What are your expenses? Because they're close enough to be able to hone in on that. When someone comes to us and they're in their early 20s or 30s, we ask about their savings rate, because at that point, that's what matters. How am I saving? And Brian, this is a bad analogy, but I'm going to share it because we're live in front of millions of people, so why wouldn't I share this? I'm not a big golfer. I enjoy playing golf. I'm not very good at it. I just feel like I should throw that out. I'm not very good at it. But when you're golfing, right, and you're on the tee box, the first shot that you hit is usually with a driver. Well, you're not trying to be like laser specific, right? You're just trying to get a long shot and get the ball out there. But as you progress through the course, the precision of the shot gets tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter until you're on the green, and then you're putting. You know the exact line, you know exactly how hard, you know exactly what you're doing. Financial planning is kind of the same way. Early on, you're just trying to figure out, okay, what are the broad strokes that get me moving in the right direction? That's the 25%. Your 25% is your driver, but then as you get closer and closer to retirement, as the whole is coming closer and closer to you, that's when you really have to hone in on it. That's when you really have to get laser precise in the things that you're doing and the decisions that you're making, and that's the right time to be focusing on it.
So what I'm hearing is, if you're young, grip and rip.
Grip and rip, baby. Just save. Just save, right?
It cracks me up.
That's a pretty good analogy.
I mean, it's not
Good.
terrible
Pretty
advice. He's right. Your money's very powerful when you're young. All right, let's move to KP's question. Morning. I have a total of $400K invested in a 401k, a Roth, and rollover IRAs and personal accounts. So that's $400K across all those accounts. About 50% of the value is in a single stock, but not by design. It's the growth of the stock that has done that.
He bought a good one.
Should I diversify?
So let me put on my compliance hat here. Obviously, we can't give you specific advice. We can't answer specific financial related questions because we don't know you. We don't know your unique circumstances. We don't know your tax circumstances. There's a lot of variables that we can't specifically speak to. So we cannot answer the question, should you diversify out of the stock? However, what I think we can talk about is, in our experience, when we've seen over concentration, what are some risks that are associated with that? And what are some potential ways that we've helped clients diversify some of that over concentration that exists in their portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, I had two big things just jump in my head. The first, I'll share that, Bo and I are originally from Atlanta, and the second firm I worked at before I started my first company was we worked with Lucent executives. And a lot of you who are, under 30, you're like, Lucent, what the heck is that? And I want you guys to know, if you go look historically, Lucent was no different than the Cisco's or some of the other household high. I mean, you could probably even say it wasn't to the level of a Google, but it might be the level of like a Microsoft or something like that on household names of what people understood in the tech sector and how things were going in the S&P 500. And Lucent is no one knows of it anymore. And the problem is that these executives all were very optimistic about the future. They thought things were going to be great, had a lot of their wealth concentrated in this. And I watched it, no matter what we told them, a lot of them rode this thing down to where they were no longer as wealthy as they thought they were. The other thing I think about is I've been very transparent about this. I hit a lick with Tesla. I got my first Tesla in 2018 with the Model 3, and I was like, whew,
This car's awesome.
I like this car. And it was one of those things I was like, I don't buy individual stocks, but I feel like I ought to go buy this stock because I really love the product. And it's been a lick. I mean, it's one of those that you're like, whew, this is incredible, the journey and ride it's been. But I'm blessed in the fact that it's still less than definitely 10% of the total net worth. And that's the part where I want you to be very careful. I want you to combine those two things and think about, okay, where is the teachable thing that I can apply? Because we can't give you specific advice, as Bo is already giving you the disclaimer on. But you can ask yourself, is this a Lucent situation where, as you said, you have 50% of your investable assets in it? That gives me a little pause. How do we try to get this thing to where it's digestible if it went down like Lucent did? Because, look, nobody knows if Tesla is going to crush it forever. I mean, but I have to know that this stock could lose a ton of its market value tomorrow, but that's not going to derail my walk towards financial independence. And I want you, KP, to also use those type of thought processes to figure out, am I overly concentrated? Because if I really 5 to 10%, and that 10% is on the aggressive side of it, because especially if you're one of these people that works at this company also, because I'm always amazed at people, because I just told you I hit a lick with an investment. A lot of people, just like the Lucent executives, not only have their investment capital with these high-flying companies, they have their working capital. So if you have both your work life as well as your investment life all tied up in one company, that's a little bit scary.
But the truth is, whether you work there or not, stocks are an emotional game. When you buy one and it's a loser, it's emotional. And maybe even more so, when you buy one and it's a winner, it's emotional. So the question becomes, if I determine that this concentration does not make sense in my financial life, well, what do I do? Do I just sell it tomorrow? Well, what if the stock is down because everything else is? But why don't I just wait for a little bit for it to recover? Whenever I find myself in an emotional place when it comes to investing, I like to figure out, okay, is there a way that I can remove some of the emotion from the decision-making process? So you hear us all the time talk about when we're introducing dollars into the market, like maybe you have an inheritance or you sold a business or you got a big bonus. There's nothing wrong with dollar cost averaging. I just want to ease it into the market over time so that way I'm not going to be 100% right, but I'm going to protect myself from being 100% wrong on how I do the timing here. When it comes to diversifying or removing risk from your portfolio, you can actually do the exact same thing. So you said right now it's 50% of your portfolio. There's nothing crazy to think about. Okay, if I want to decrease this risk, I don't need to just sell it all tomorrow. Perhaps I'll sell this much every month or this much every quarter, and I'll put together a systematic strategy that whether the stock is going up or down, I'm slowly moving out of it. If it goes up, great, my current holdings are making more money. If it goes down, okay, great, I sold some last quarter, I'm getting out at a good time. And so that way you don't struggle with all the emotion that can often be tied up in, oh man, I hit this one really big, I hit this one really strong. I think if you can do that, you're gonna be more likely to set yourself up for success, because we've heard this too many times. Someone did the thing, they bought the stock and it blew up and they were like, no, this one I'm doing. Or we saw this recently with like cryptos. We've seen like people that were on paper multi-millionaires on cryptocurrencies, and then the walls came crumbling down and it all imploded, and they're sitting there thinking, oh man, all that wealth that I had had evaporated. Man, what if I could have cashed out on that? What if, if you win the lottery ticket, most people go cash out the big win. They don't try to like roll it completely back in. You have to think about it that way as you approach those decisions.
I would also, because I think everything there was great, but also, Bo, something you just said hit. You and I had a conversation, and I've known a few people that hit the big lick. But then, and it was such a big portion of their net worth that when it goes down, if it goes down, it haunts them.
Yep.
And that's
absolutely.
something that I think about all the time. It's just like, because I have some people, I'm not going to get because they might be too close to me. I don't know I'm talking about them. But I have people that tell me stories over and over and over again. You like, man, that must hurt for this person to forget that they've shared this story with me 4 times about they had the big one. They had made it all. If they'd have just sold a portion of it, they could be on Easy Street right now. That's scary.
Yep.
I mean, that's sad. Because, I mean, that's somebody, it really, the haunting is the right word on that, is that if you have created success, you've created enough money. Remember, there's 2 parts of this journey. There's creating wealth, but then there's also keeping wealth. You better think about those 2 components, because a lot of us always focus on the maximization. We spend a lot of head time on maximization, but I want people, and this is why we always talk about taking a relationship to the next level. Part of our job as financial advisors is making sure that we help you also keep the wealth.
That's right.
So balance those 2 goals, because they are not completely the same.
Great question. Okay. Braden says, why would I go off of marginal versus effective tax rate when considering a Roth conversion? I'm 29, married, and on step 8 of the financial order of operations. He found the Money Guy show recently and then changed his 401k investing to Roth. So that's from listening to us, I guess. And he loves tax-free growth. What do you guys think?
All right, so there's a few breadcrumbs in there, Brian, that I think are interesting. One, I love whenever we get tax questions because I can just feel the excitement welling up inside of you. For a lot of people, they might not know the difference in like what a marginal tax rate versus an effective tax rate. So I think we ought to level set and kind of talk through that. And then it's interesting, Braden said that he switched his contributions to Roth, which maybe tells me a little about his current tax bracket. But he's also thinking about doing some conversions, and he's trying to figure out if I use marginal or effective. So I think there's some interesting stuff there we can talk about.
Marginal, by the way, because marginals, when you see them, if you go just type in tax rates for the government, we're here in America. By the way, when I was over in Paris for my daughter's graduation trip or whatever, the tour guides did not know we were a progressive tax system over
What did they think
over
we
here.
were?
I mean, maybe I'm too nerdy that I should not be talking to tour guides while we're looking at all these historical
it's
things.
a while to me the progressive tax system didn't come up.
But it is. I mean, here in the United States, we have what's called a progressive tax system, meaning that based upon where your income is, the tax rates do go up.
Sure.
And when somebody says marginal tax rate, what they're basically saying is what tax rate are you at within this progressive tax system to where what is your next dollar of income taxed at? And the tippity top of it currently is 37% on the federal level. And then in addition to your federal tax rate, you also have your state income tax rate, because the majority of the states in the United States do have some type of tax on your income. There's a handful that actually are tax-free states, so that makes your calculation a heck of a lot easier. But when we do our analysis of Roth versus traditional, a lot of times we are talking about the marginal rate, and the question is why not use effective, which is essentially what's your average of what you take all your income, and then you figure out what you paid in taxes, and you figure out what your effective rate is. That sounds so much simpler and easier, but what it doesn't tell you is what the decision matrix of is. What happens to the next dollar that comes into my possession and my responsibility, so I make the best decision going forward? So that's why we use marginal, because that's going to be at that higher tax rate, so you can figure it out. Because a lot of you might be at the point where, say you're married, say you have a few kiddos running around, you might actually have a 6-figure income, but when you look at all the deductions and everything else that comes in, your effective rate might be like 12%, but your marginal rate might be in the high 20s. We want to make sure that you're making decisions off of what the next dollar does. I hope I explained that well, Bo.
That was exactly right.
So here's when you're trying to figure out marginal versus effective and how I make decisions? Because it sounds like what I heard from, is it Braden? Braden probably is at a higher income situation, but he loves that tax-free growth. And I hear you. I mean, there's a reason the government limits how much we can put in Roth accounts, and we know the power of compounding growth. I mean, money multiplier. Go to moneyguy.com/resources. Go look at what $1 at your age can become by the time you reach retirement. And you too will get excited if you think about, man, I could be a millionaire, tax-free millionaire, if I'm using Roth accounts correctly. And look, for young people who are in their 20s and 30s, I think who have that much time on your side, yes, it definitely pushes the scale to favor Roth accounts. But for high income people, you're thinking about, man, is my income going to be higher and lower in retirement? And a lot of people, once you lose your earned income, your actual taxable income goes way down, and you're in a much lower marginal tax rate. That's actually what's going on behind the curtain of our analysis. So that's why we say, yes, if you're in a super high tax rate right now, we're hoping in retirement you're in a lower tax rate. So that's why you might want to, if you're in those higher tax rates, take the deduction right now, because then you'll have opportunities to do Roth conversions or other things in the future to turn it into Roth. But there are a few exceptions, and I'll leave a little bit on there for you, Bo. But for people who are getting older and you're thinking more of the estate planning,
sure, there
are people, we have clients that say, look, taxes, this is not a tax decision anymore. This is more of a legacy decision. And I will say, look, I don't care that you're in the tippity top of of the marginal rates. From an estate planning and a legacy planning standpoint, yeah, let's go ahead and do Roth. But that is so advanced planning that's not something that you should just default to. There needs to be a lot of analysis, a lot of decision making on what the why of this money is. And that's why the work with us always comes in at that point. But that I hope, I was just trying to give the mindset we take with the development of these rules, Bo, but also of people might be applying with their money as well.
Yeah, we love tax-free growth. I mean, we talk about it all the time on the show. It's in the financial order of operations. But we don't love tax-free growth at the expense of everything else. And so when I hear you're someone who's able to shift to do either Roth contributions, your 401k, or even your Roth IRA, and you're still thinking about conversions, my immediate thought goes to, okay, well, are you at this stage of life? Because I think you said you're young, you're 29 years old. Does it make sense to begin converting assets to Roth if you're already able to build Roth elsewhere? Because what's going to happen is if you're working for an employer and you're getting an employer match, you already have pre-tax dollars. They're going to be growing. They're going to be growing. They're going to be growing. It's okay to let money grow tax deferred, especially if you have a mechanism through which you can still contribute to Roth. I see it all the time where people try to do like all Roth as early as possible, no excuses. Maybe that's the right decision. Maybe that's not the right decision. I am a proponent. I just don't like paying taxes, right? I mean, I pay what I'm supposed to. If you're IRS agents, if you're listening, I pay what I'm supposed to. But I try to make very wise decisions that I can minimize my tax responsibility as much as possible. Be careful if you are accelerating too much. There can be some unintended consequences associated with that.
Thanks so much for your question, Braden. Okay. Michael asks, our household is approaching the Roth income limit. Would you recommend continuing Roth 401k contributions and backdoor Roth, or using the traditional 401k to enable normal Roth IRA contributions?
All right, read it one more time. He's approaching the. Did you get? Maybe you don't need it if you got it.
Well, I mean, I think that this is always the dilemma of people who are successful, because we love. It ties back to one of the previous questions where we love Roth and tax-free growth, but it is one of those things. If you are reaching the income limit of Roth IRA funding, and because he's asking, do I just roll into doing Roth 401k? You got some homework to do. Sure. You got to look at where your tax rates are, and you have to look at what your anticipated income is going to be in retirement. Because if you're in a very high income situation now, but you anticipate in retirement you're going to be in a much lower income tax situation, there's a chance that be careful just defaulting with a higher income right into Roth contributions. You might be missing out on an opportunity to retire in the future, especially with them talking about taking required minimum distribution age. It went from 70 and a half to currently at 72, but there's been talk that this thing's gonna go up to 75. So if you were one of these people that's retiring at 55, and your income is going to drop like a rock because you're no longer having earned income. You're only going to have your taxable investment income and whatever other sources coming in. You have potentially 20 years to do Roth conversions.
Yep.
So pay attention to that stuff. Now, Bo, I want you, because you do such a good job of explaining this, somebody who's right on that cusp of no longer being able to do Roth contributions, I don't even know if we differ, but I just don't get excited about people finding out they exceeded and then figuring out how you're going to get that money out of those Roth accounts.
I think what's really interesting is in the question, I think Reby had mentioned that bumping up to the Roth income limits, but they still have the ability to do backdoor Roths, right? And that's like, it sounds like a super seedy name for it. It's really just a Roth conversion strategy where if you have the right account structure, meaning you don't have any other outside IRAs, no IRA rollovers or SEP IRAs or simple IRAs, you can actually do a non-deductible traditional IRA contribution, and then you can choose if you want to convert those dollars to Roth. It's a mechanism through which you can turn after-tax IRA contributions into Roth contributions. Well, if you're in a position where your account structure allows you to do that and your cash flow allows you to do that, I love seeing those kinds of people that are hitting those Roth income limits say, okay, I'm just going to do the back door. I'm just going to contribute to my Roth that way. And what I can do is I can still do my pre-tax 401k contributions, get that current year tax savings, and I've got a best of both worlds. I'm building up pre-tax dollars in my 401k because my marginal tax rate suggests that I should, but I'm also building up Roth dollars by doing these Roth contributions, and then the income limits don't matter, right? If you're bumping up to something where you have other IRAs, you have SEPs or simples or traditionals or IRA rollovers, and you have to determine each year, like, am I going to be Roth eligible or not Roth eligible? I think I have come over to your side, Brian. I think realistically, just wait until you get to the next year. Make sure that you know what your income is, and you can just be a Marty McFly Roth contributor. You can go back in time and put that money in there all the way up until April 15th of the following year. That is so much easier than making ineligible contributions. And then you have to go back and figure out, okay, I got to pull out that contribution I made and I got to pull out all the applicable earnings. And if you're someone who's doing that every month, it can get just really, really messy. And by the way, those earnings are taxable to you. And if you're under 59.5, they're also subject to penalty. It's just a lot easier to avoid all of that and just wait till you get through the year, know your income, and determine if you can contribute directly to a Roth IRA or not.
Yeah, I mean, my point is just be very self-aware when you're getting close to those income limits, because I feel bad saying it, but it's not a pet peeve, but it's just like, oh man, seriously? Because when somebody funds a Roth IRA and then you have to help a client get it out of there,
it's messy.
It's not the easiest process. There's some work involved with it. And in a lot of ways, I feel like it's self-inflicted because you didn't have to. It's an unforced error. You didn't have to create the extra work. So that's why I have gotten to the point where if you're in that gray zone, yes, you could go ahead and you could probably do a Roth conversion strategy, AKA the back door. But I like, if you're so close that it's really gray on if you're going to be able to fund or not fund, I'm all about maximization, but on $6,000 a year, I'm okay with just letting it build up in the background in cash and savings and then investing it once. Because remember, you have from January through April of the following tax year to still fund that IRA contribution. And you have a little extra time to kind of let the numbers develop to know where you're going to land so that you don't have that complicated oopsie of how do I get that money out of there. And also, because I know a lot of people, because you're like, just do the Roth conversion. Yes, but realize you are adding a level of complexity that, I mean, probably one of the most often things that I have to step in and help CPAs work through are these Roth conversion strategies, AKA backdoor, where CPAs just sometimes struggle on writing those letters to the IRS, and we've had to jump in and clean up situations.
Or they struggle even doing it correctly on the tax return. They don't fill out the Form 8606 and it makes it taxable, and it's just advanced.
It adds a layer of complexity that we want you to do it if it's appropriate, but if you can avoid it by just waiting a few months, that's not a bad decision.
I agree.
All right, we've got another question from Tanner. I just accepted a new job with a 75% pay increase. Congrats, first of all. Should I put 15% into Roth IRA and then 5% into an ESPP? I'm nervous about the ESPP while markets are down and all the news and talk of recession this year. Also, I'm debt-free with 3 months of an emergency fund and $135K take home between his wife and himself.
So, Bo,
What do you think?
I got so excited about the 75% pay increase.
I'm going to tell you the question. You ready for this?
Yeah.
I'm going to answer his first part of the question. Should I do this? Follow the financial order of operations. That is the answer to your question. This is only like a 10-second answer. Boom, easy. Follow financial order of operations, even with that higher income. Something he asked about that I want us to weigh in on that I think is great is specifically an employee stock purchase plan. A lot of people have those. They don't realize how exciting that is and one of the unique things. And this is what he said that I really want you to talk about. Market's kind of dicey, kind of going down. I'm a little nervous about doing the ESPP right now. Why, Brian, is that the wrong mindset to have when it comes to specifically an ESPP plan or maybe just investing new dollars in general?
Tanner, first of all, welcome to the family. Because
Welcome
when I hear this, and I want to celebrate you getting the 75%, but I do feel like you are in the transformation phase of going from normal individual to financial mutant. Because remember, the origin story for financial mutant status is those that get excited when markets are getting beaten up is because you know your money's getting more value. Essentially, the spring is getting loaded. You're getting more value, and it's going to, when the markets recover, your shares that you bought while everybody else was scared with that contrarian mentality actually rewards you tremendously. And that's where the word dicey and all these things, I get excited for young people. The scariest of times are the biggest of opportunities.
Absolutely.
And here's where Bo was alluding to with these employee stock purchase plans. These things, in a lot of ways, and we've talked about this on our course on learn.moneyguy.com. If you want to accelerate your path and actually buy the course, we talk about how step 2, the free money from your employer, you can include the employee stock purchase plans if they're offering you these 15% discounts. Because think about this, that a lot of these employers, and I'll tell you, it gets even better. A lot of these employers say, hey, not only are we going to give you a 15% discount on your employee stock purchase plans, but we're going to choose the lower price, whether it's the beginning of the quarter or the end of the quarter. So think about that. That means that this could be even much larger than 15% if they're choosing the lower price from either the beginning or end of the quarter. That gives you some insulation as well as some extra juice in the performance. Those are good things. So, Tanner, I would encourage you to look at that employee stock purchase plan. Now, there's a word of caution. Have a structure, have a plan for how you're going to diversify that money over the long term, because there's always that risk, and I've shared this before. If your working capital and then your investment capital are at the exact same place, that gets a little scary, because that's the definition of all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
I mean, it really is. So you've got to make sure you understand the value of diversification and spreading it out. So that's why have a plan. We work with clients all the time on creating those employee stock purchase plans where you can turn them over, you can ladder it, you can work through all kind of cool things to make sure you're maximizing the opportunity, that you figure out what percentage of your income to put into this, to really turbocharge it, but just realize that there is a balancing act there.
I don't know your particular specific situation, but here's what I know. You just got a 75% pay raise. So I'm going to operate under the assumption that pre-pay raise, you were making things work. You were getting by. You were making ends meet. Pay raises are a fantastic opportunity to immediately increase your savings first. Go ahead and think, all right, I'm going to do the ESPP. I'm going to increase my 401k. I'm going to max out my Roth. I'm going to whatever the thing is before you have time to let your lifestyle catch up to the income. If you can make a practice of doing that for the entirety of your career, you will be amazed at how your army of dollar bills builds through time as your income builds through time, because you are paying yourself first.
That's great.
Tanner, thank you for your question. We're going to go to Travis's question out on YouTube. He says, I know that 10% is considered an average yearly return for index funds, But what percentage should someone strive to increase their net worth by each year?
How much? Oh man, there's not. Oh man, brother, there's not a good answer to that question, but there's a great tool to help you figure out what you're doing.
Yeah, there
this
is.
Man,
You know
I
what I
love this. We have a cool thing that we're working on that I think you guys are going to really love, is because I think there's this cool thing that you can do where if you compared how much income you've earned in your entire lifetime, how much of that actually turned into net worth? I mean, that is a fascinating journey because we also, I mean, it evolves because I also like to think about the fact that you will get to a point that, and I play this game when I update my net worth statement. And by the way, if you haven't gone and checked out our net worth dashboard and tool, I would encourage you to go to learn.moneyguy.com because we do have a dashboard tool for your net worth that lets you kind of compare what's your change of net worth and how does that compare to your annual income last year. And if the number is getting to the point where your net worth went up more than your annual income is, guys, you're getting close to financial independence in some ways. Now, look, there's some years because we realize we're in a downturn right now, a bear market, and we've had some semblance of a slight recovery. Who knows if this is the full way out? But there are going to be years, especially after you've been in a bear market, where you might have a 20 to 25% rate of return. And those years can really skew it. It doesn't mean you've necessarily hit the full financial independence. But you will see other years where maybe the market only made 6 or 8% for the year, and you still had returns, meaning the increase in your net worth was greater than what you earned. That is probably that indicator. It's not that outlier year. That just means your money's actually working just as hard, if not harder, than what you can do with your back, your hands, and your brain. That's a powerful moment. So I think 10%. I mean, look, it's fun to run illustrations at 10%. I don't use 10% when I'm trying to stress test, though.
I think what's so interesting is we had a comment that just came through. Vinyl said, "Hey, I track my changes in net worth. I think it's somewhere, usually on average about 5 to 50%. Yeah, that's exactly right. Like it's this huge range. Here's what I love about your net worth. Your net worth doesn't just track your portfolio value. Your net worth tracks your entire financial picture. That's why we love the template that we make available at learn.moneyguy.com, because even in years where the market's down, even in years where your portfolio is losing value, if you're a saver, there's a chance that your savings will overcome the drop in net worth. If you're someone who owns a primary residence and you choose to value that at market on your net worth statement, or if you're someone who's paying down debt, you're knocking out auto loan payments, you're knocking out your mortgage payments, and you see that line increasing, even though the market may be down, your net worth might actually be going up, which is super, super, super exciting. And if you can track this for year after year after year after year, you'll eventually look at this, but holy cow, how did I get to where I am today knowing where I started? It is so much fun. I encourage all the young folks I talk to, when they graduate college, start their very first job, and they say, man, I am broke as a joke. I got no money. Why would I ever track my net worth? I say, look, I promise your future self will thank you. Even if it's a negative net worth, put it in the spreadsheet and start tracking it, because you're going to be amazed. And it's going to be the rocket fuel that keeps you dedicated to the cause over the long term. Because even in years like 2022, where the market, who knows where it's going to end, but it's down right now, a lot of our financial mutants out there, because of the decisions they're making, their net worths are still going up, even though the market is down.
I think you and I'm close to 2 decades with my data. I think we internally asked around to everybody to find out how long they've been tracking the net worth. I think it was Eric Bear who had the longest running
his
streak.
was long, buddy.
Because I think his was like right out of college.
Yep.
And I was so impressed to find somebody who had the discipline and the foresight to think about this, to do it, because he's a little bit younger. I'll just say a little bit younger than me. But he's been around for a long enough time that shows the incredible discipline. And I would encourage you, don't do this. Wait for the good news of start having great income. You start seeing your portfolio grow because you've reached critical mass. Start doing this as soon as possible, because I'm telling you, that dashboard feedback, as well as waking up that invisible hand of you working to improve your financial situation just by being the person who looks at the data every year, it works. So go check it out. Learn.moneyguy.com. It's not just a net worth input device. It's actually a dashboard to let you kind of know what those metrics are that you should be watching.
I'm 2 years into tracking my net worth because of you guys. And I use our tool, and I'm intrigued. I'm really interested and excited to see how the numbers on that dashboard changes. So yeah, if you're kind of like, you guys talk about net worth all the time, how do I do that? That's exactly why we made this tool. We love to try to just take these complex things, or things that sound complex at first, like the net worth tracking, and make it simple for you. You can just go download this tool at learn.moneyguy.com. I'm loving it so far. So with that, thank you so much for asking your questions. Thank you for playing Money Guy Bingo. We got our 5 winners. If you were tagged in the chat, go ahead and email Katie, Katie at moneyguy.com. Make sure you just, prove that you are the person you say you are. Upload your bingo card and your YouTube or Facebook username, and we'll get you a tumbler. So thanks so much for playing, guys. We love doing these live streams with you.
I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen, and for Reby sitting over there in the beautiful warm set that we've set up for Money Guy Team, out.